The fluorescent lights in the family courthouse hummed with an oppressive drone as Marcus Williams sat alone on the wooden bench, his calloused hands trembling slightly as he clutched a manila folder containing every document that could prove he deserved to keep his daughter. The marble floors echoed with the sharp clicks of expensive heels and polished dress shoes, but Marcus wore his only pair of work boots, still stained with motor oil despite his best efforts to clean them the night before. His lawyer had canceled that morning, citing a family emergency, leaving him to face the most important battle of his life completely alone. Across the hallway, his ex-wife Sandra sat confidently with her new husband, a successful investment banker, and their high-powered attorney who cost more per hour than Marcus made in a week. She wore a designer suit that probably cost more than Marcus's rent, her perfectly manicured nails tapping impatiently against her leather briefcase. Their whispered conversations and occasional glances in his direction made it clear they believed this hearing was just a formality. After all, what judge would choose a struggling single father working 2 jobs over a stable, wealthy household? The bailiff called out case numbers with mechanical precision, and Marcus felt his stomach clench tighter with each name that wasn't his. 8-year-old Emma was everything to him. She was the reason he worked 16-hour days, the reason he'd taught himself to braid hair from YouTube videos, the reason he'd learned to make pancakes shaped like butterflies every Sunday morning. But in this sterile courthouse, surrounded by people in expensive suits discussing his life like a business transaction, Marcus felt smaller than he ever had. 3 months earlier, Sandra had filed for full custody, claiming Marcus's financial instability and demanding work schedule made him an unfit parent. She painted a picture of a man too poor and too busy to provide the life Emma deserved. The truth was more complex, but truth didn't always matter in family court. Marcus worked as a mechanic at Rodriguez Auto Repair during the day and drove for a rideshare company at night, every dollar earned going toward rent, food, and the small extras that made Emma smile. He'd sold his guitar, his father's watch, and every possession of value to afford even the consultation fees with attorneys, only to discover he couldn't afford their services for the actual hearing. The night before the custody hearing, Marcus had stood in Emma's bedroom doorway, watching her sleep peacefully in the twin bed he'd painted pink with unicorn stencils. Her drawings covered every wall, stick figures of a man and a girl holding hands under crooked rainbows, with "I love Daddy" written in purple crayon across the top. How could he explain to her 8-year-old heart that tomorrow a stranger in a black robe might decide she couldn't live with him anymore? How could he tell her that all his love, all his sacrifices, all their Saturday morning adventures and bedtime stories might not be enough in the eyes of the law? That morning, as Marcus had dropped Emma off at school, she'd hugged him extra tight, sensing something was wrong despite his attempts to act normal. "Promise you'll pick me up today, Daddy," she'd whispered against his chest. And Marcus had to bite back tears as he promised her something he might not be able to keep. He'd watched her run toward the school building, her backpack bouncing with each step, and wondered if it might be the last time he'd do the school drop-off as her father. Now, sitting in the courthouse, Marcus replayed every moment of doubt Sandra's lawyer would use against him. The times he'd been late picking up Emma because of work, the modest apartment they shared compared to Sandra's sprawling suburban home, the carefully documented instances when he'd sent Emma to school with a packed lunch instead of money for the cafeteria, not because he wanted to save money, but because he'd learned she preferred the sandwiches he made with little notes tucked inside. The courtroom doors opened with a heavy thud, and Marcus watched as other families emerged, some crying tears of joy, others walking away in devastated silence. Each outcome reminded him how much power rested in the hands of one person, the judge who would decide Emma's fate. He'd researched Judge Patricia Hawthorne extensively, reading every available article about her 30-year career on the bench. She was known for her no-nonsense approach and her particular attention to children's welfare. But beyond the professional accolades and legal precedents, Marcus had no idea what kind of person would be determining his daughter's future. As the afternoon wore on, Marcus noticed an elderly woman struggling with a broken-down car in the courthouse parking lot. From his seat by the window, he could see her standing helplessly beside a smoking sedan, her judicial robes draped over one arm as she spoke frantically into her phone. The parking lot was nearly empty, and security guards were focused on the building entrances, leaving the woman stranded in the summer heat. Marcus glanced at the clock on the courthouse wall. His case wasn't scheduled for another hour, and despite everything weighing on his mind, he couldn't watch someone in distress without offering help. 25 years of working with his hands had taught him that most car problems had simple solutions, and leaving someone stranded went against everything his father had taught him about being a decent human being. He approached the woman cautiously, not wanting to startle her. "Excuse me, ma'am, I couldn't help but notice you're having car trouble. I'm a mechanic, and I'd be happy to take a look if you'd like." The woman looked up from her phone, her silver hair slightly disheveled from the stress, and Marcus could see the relief wash over her face. She was probably in her 60s, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, and something about her reminded him of his late mother. "Oh, thank goodness," she said, pressing a hand to her chest. "I was supposed to be back in court 20 minutes ago, but my car just started smoking and making this terrible grinding sound. I've called 3 tow trucks, but they all said it would be at least 2 hours." She gestured helplessly at the sedan, which was indeed releasing a steady stream of white smoke from under the hood. Marcus rolled up his sleeves, grateful for something concrete he could fix in a day full of uncertainties. "Let me take a look. Most overheating issues are pretty straightforward." He popped the hood and immediately identified the problem. A loose clamp had allowed a coolant hose to slip off, causing the engine to overheat rapidly. It was exactly the kind of simple fix that looked catastrophic to someone unfamiliar with car mechanics, but could be resolved in minutes with the right knowledge. "You're in luck," Marcus told her, already reaching into his pocket for the small toolkit he always carried. "Just a loose coolant hose. I can have you back on the road in 5 minutes." The woman watched in amazement as Marcus's experienced hands quickly reattached the hose and secured the clamp, then checked the coolant levels and tested the radiator cap for proper pressure. "I can't believe it was that simple," she said, shaking her head in wonder. "The engine was making such horrible noises, I thought I'd need a complete replacement." Marcus chuckled, wiping his hands on the shop rag he kept in his back pocket. "Cars are like people sometimes. They make a lot of noise when they're hurting, but usually they just need someone to pay attention to what's really wrong." As the woman prepared to leave, she turned back to Marcus with genuine gratitude in her eyes. "I can't thank you enough for this. Most people would have just walked past someone in trouble. You're clearly a good man." She reached into her purse, but Marcus held up a hand to stop her. "Please, no payment necessary. Just glad I could help. Hope the rest of your day goes better." Marcus returned to the courthouse with a small sense of satisfaction, having solved at least one problem in a day full of unsolvable challenges. He'd used up 30 minutes of his waiting time, but helping someone in need had steadied his nerves and reminded him of who he really was beneath all the anxiety and self-doubt. His father had always said that character wasn't what you did when people were watching, but what you did when you thought no one would ever know. Back in the courthouse hallway, Sandra and her legal team were reviewing their strategy with the confidence of people who'd never doubted the outcome. Marcus caught fragments of their conversation about Emma's best interests and financial stability, clinical terms that reduced his daughter to a set of variables in an equation. They spoke about her as if she were a commodity to be allocated, rather than a little girl who still slept with the stuffed elephant Marcus had won for her at a county fair 2 years earlier. The bailiff finally called Marcus's case, and his heart hammered against his ribs as he walked into the courtroom. The space felt enormous and intimidating, with high ceilings and formal portraits of long-dead judges staring down from the walls. Sandra and her attorney took their seats at the plaintiff's table with practiced confidence, while Marcus sat alone at the defendant's table, acutely aware of how his work clothes stood out in the formal environment. "All rise for the Honorable Judge Patricia Hawthorne," the bailiff announced, and Marcus felt his knees nearly buckle as he recognized the woman entering the courtroom. It was the same woman whose car he'd fixed in the parking lot less than an hour earlier. Judge Hawthorne took her seat at the bench, and for just a moment their eyes met across the courtroom. Marcus saw a flicker of recognition cross her face, but her expression remained professionally neutral as she reviewed the case files. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from, and if you've ever had a moment where a small act of kindness changed everything. Sandra's attorney launched into his opening statement with theatrical precision, painting Marcus as a well-meaning but fundamentally inadequate father. He presented charts showing Marcus's income compared to Sandra's household earnings, photographs of their respective homes, and testimony about Marcus's demanding work schedule. Every argument was technically accurate, but stripped of context, reducing Marcus's sacrifices and love to mere statistics on a legal brief. "Your Honor," the attorney concluded, "while we don't question Mr. Williams's affection for his daughter, affection alone cannot provide the stability, educational opportunities, and secure future that Emma deserves. My clients offer a 2-parent household, financial security, and the resources necessary for Emma's optimal development." When it was Marcus's turn to speak, he rose on unsteady legs, acutely aware that he had no legal training, no prepared speeches, and no attorney to guide him through the labyrinthine process of family court. He looked across the courtroom at Sandra, remembering how they'd once planned a future together, how they'd both cried tears of joy when Emma was born, and how quickly love could turn to legal warfare when a marriage failed. "Your Honor," Marcus began, his voice stronger than he'd expected. "I won't pretend I have as much money as my ex-wife or that I can offer Emma the kind of material advantages she'll have in their household, but I can tell you that every single day for the past 3 years since our divorce, Emma has been my first thought when I wake up and my last thought before I fall asleep." He pulled out his phone, showing the judge the lock screen photo of Emma grinning toothlessly after losing her first tooth. "This little girl taught me that being a parent isn't about having the perfect house or the perfect income. It's about showing up every single time, no matter how tired you are or how many bills need paying. It's about learning to braid hair because she wants to look pretty for school pictures. It's about working 2 jobs so she can take piano lessons, even though it means I drink coffee instead of eating lunch most days." Judge Hawthorne listened intently, occasionally making notes, and Marcus noticed she seemed to be weighing his words more carefully than he dared hope. He continued, "Emma knows I'll always be there for her. When she has nightmares, she runs to my room because she knows I'll read her stories until she feels safe again. When she brings home drawings from school, I hang every single one on our refrigerator because her artwork is more important to me than any decoration money could buy. Sandra's attorney objected to the emotional testimony, arguing that feelings couldn't override practical considerations about Emma's welfare. But Judge Hawthorne allowed Marcus to continue. There was something in her demeanor that suggested she was hearing more than just legal arguments in her courtroom that day. "I know I can't give Emma everything," Marcus admitted, his voice thick with emotion. "But I can give her something that no amount of money can buy. I can give her a father who loves her unconditionally, who sees her as the most important thing in his world, and who will sacrifice everything to make sure she grows up knowing she's valued for who she is, not what she has." The courtroom fell silent as Marcus sat down, and for a moment the only sound was the distant hum of air conditioning and the scratch of Judge Hawthorne's pen across her notepad. Sandra's attorney presented character witnesses and financial experts, building a compelling case for why Emma would be better served in their stable, affluent household. Every argument was logical, well-researched, and legally sound. But when Judge Hawthorne finally spoke, her voice carried a weight that suggested she was considering factors beyond the legal briefs and financial statements spread across her desk. "I've been presiding over family court cases for 30 years, she began, "and I've learned that the most important evidence often can't be found in documents or testimony." She looked directly at Marcus, and he felt as though she was seeing past the nervous man in work clothes to something deeper. "This morning, I experienced car trouble in the courthouse parking lot. A stranger approached me when I was stranded and frustrated, and without asking for anything in return, he took time out of his own stressful day to help someone in need. That stranger was Mr. Williams." The courtroom buzzed with surprised whispers, and Sandra's attorney looked visibly shaken by this unexpected revelation. Judge Hawthorne continued, "Mr. Williams had no idea who I was. He had every reason to be focused on his own concerns, given the importance of today's hearing for his family. Yet, when he saw someone in distress, his first instinct was to help." Marcus felt tears burning behind his eyes as Judge Hawthorne's words sank in. The simple act of kindness that had felt like a small break from his anxiety had somehow become the most important evidence in his case. "Character," Judge Hawthorne said, her voice growing stronger, "is not demonstrated by financial statements or house square footage. Character is revealed in the choices we make when we think no one is watching. Mr. Williams showed me today that he possesses the kind of fundamental decency and selflessness that makes a good parent." She shuffled through her papers, but Marcus could tell she'd already made her decision. "While I acknowledge that Mrs. Hendricks can provide certain material advantages, I am convinced that Emma's best interests are served by remaining with her father. The bond between them is evident, and Mr. Williams has demonstrated that he prioritizes his daughter's emotional welfare above his own convenience." The gavel came down with finality, and Marcus felt his knees give out as relief flooded through him. Emma would stay with him. All the sleepless nights, all the financial struggles, all the fear and uncertainty had led to this moment of validation. He wasn't just keeping his daughter. A judge had declared that his love and dedication made him the better parent. Sandra burst into tears, and her attorney immediately began discussing appeal options, but Marcus barely heard them. Judge Hawthorne had seen something in him that he'd sometimes struggled to see in himself. She'd recognized that being a good parent wasn't about having the most resources, but about having the biggest heart. As people filed out of the courtroom, Judge Hawthorne approached Marcus quietly. "Mr. Williams, I want you to know that my decision wasn't based solely on your kindness in the parking lot, though it certainly reinforced my assessment of your character. Your daughter is lucky to have a father who puts her needs above his own comfort and convenience." Marcus could barely speak through his emotion. "Thank you, Your Honor. I promise Emma will never doubt how much she's loved." Judge Hawthorne smiled, the stern judicial mask dropping for just a moment to reveal the grandmother she probably was outside the courtroom. "I have no doubt about that. Take care of that little girl, and take care of yourself, too." That afternoon, Marcus picked Emma up from school with tears of joy still fresh on his cheeks. When she ran to him with her usual enthusiasm, he swept her up in his arms and held her tighter than ever before. "Daddy, why are you crying?" she asked, touching his cheek with her small hand. "Happy tears, sweetheart," Marcus whispered against her hair. "Just really, really happy tears." Emma accepted this explanation with the easy trust of a child who'd never doubted her father's love. And as they walked hand in hand toward their modest car, Marcus felt richer than any millionaire. Share if you've ever experienced something similar, or if you believe that kindness always comes back to you. That evening, as they ate dinner at their small kitchen table, Emma chattered about her day at school, unaware of how close she'd come to losing the life they'd built together. Marcus listened to every word, marveling at how the simple act of helping a stranger had saved everything he cared about. He thought about his father's lessons about character and kindness, and how those values had literally changed the course of his life. Judge Hawthorne's words echoed in his mind throughout the evening. She'd seen past his financial struggles and work clothes to recognize something deeper, something that couldn't be bought or manufactured. In a world that often measured worth by bank account balances and material possessions, she'd chosen to value integrity and love above everything else. As Marcus tucked Emma into bed that night, she looked up at him with her mother's eyes but his stubborn chin. "Daddy, will you always be here to read me stories?" she asked, and Marcus felt his heart break and heal simultaneously. "Always, baby girl," he promised, kissing her forehead. "Always and forever." Emma smiled and closed her eyes, secure in the knowledge that her daddy's promises were unbreakable. And Marcus sat beside her bed for a long time, watching her sleep and marveling at how much his life had changed in a single day. The custody battle was over, but Marcus knew the real work was just beginning. He had a daughter to raise, a future to build, and a responsibility to prove Judge Hawthorne right every single day. But as he finally turned off Emma's bedroom light and headed to his own room, Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced in months: hope. Outside, rain began to fall against the windows of their small apartment, but inside, everything was warm and safe, and exactly as it should be. Sometimes, Marcus reflected, the smallest acts of kindness create the biggest miracles. Sometimes, helping a stranger fix their broken-down car fixes something broken in your own life. And sometimes, being a good person when no one is watching is exactly what the right person needs to see. Would you have done the same in his place? Let us know in the comments what you think makes someone a truly good parent. The next morning brought the familiar routine that Marcus had feared he might lose forever. Emma's sleepy face at breakfast, her excited chatter about the upcoming school day, and the precious few minutes of father-daughter time before the world demanded their attention. But everything felt different now, blessed with the knowledge that these moments were his to keep. As Marcus dropped Emma off at school, other parents greeted him with new respect. Word had spread about the custody case, and while some might have expected him to gloat or celebrate publicly, Marcus simply smiled and went about his day. Victory wasn't about proving others wrong. It was about proving himself worthy of the trust Judge Hawthorne and Emma had placed in him. At the auto shop, Marcus threw himself into his work with renewed purpose. Every car he repaired was a step toward securing Emma's future. Every satisfied customer a small victory in building the stable life she deserved. His co-workers noticed the change in him immediately. The worried, stressed man who'd been barely holding himself together for months had been replaced by someone who moved with quiet confidence and unshakable determination. Rodriguez, the shop owner, pulled Marcus aside during lunch. "Whatever happened in that courtroom yesterday, it was good for you," the older man observed. "You're working like a man who knows exactly what he's fighting for." Marcus smiled, thinking about Judge Hawthorne's words about character being revealed in unexpected moments. "I learned something important yesterday," Marcus replied. "Sometimes the most important things in life happen when you're not even trying to make them happen. You just have to be the kind of person who does the right thing, even when it's inconvenient." That afternoon, as Marcus drove his rideshare route, he found himself looking at his passengers differently. Each person who got into his car was fighting their own battles, carrying their own hopes and fears, and deserving of kindness regardless of where they were going or how much they tipped. He helped an elderly man with his groceries, waited patiently while a young mother wrestled with a complicated car seat, and listened compassionately to a college student's stress about final exams. These small interactions, which once felt like obligations that slowed him down, now felt like opportunities to practice the kind of person he wanted Emma to see when she looked at her father. Judge Hawthorne had shown him that character was built in ordinary moments, not grand gestures, and Marcus was determined to live up to that standard every single day. When Emma's bedtime arrived that night, she had a surprise for him. "I drew this at school today," she announced, pulling a carefully folded piece of construction paper from her backpack. Marcus unfolded it to reveal a crayon drawing of a man and a little girl standing beside a car, with the words, "My Daddy Helps People," written across the top in purple letters. "Mrs. Peterson said we should draw someone we admire," Emma explained seriously. "I told her about how you always help people fix their cars, and she said that makes you a hero." Marcus felt his throat tighten with emotion as he studied his daughter's artwork, seeing himself through her innocent eyes. "Do you really think I'm a hero, sweetheart?" he asked, and Emma nodded emphatically. "You help people every day, and you take care of me, and you make the best pancakes in the whole world. That's definitely a hero." Marcus hugged her tightly, understanding for the first time that he'd been so focused on what he couldn't give Emma that he'd failed to recognize everything he could. As the weeks passed, life settled into a new rhythm, marked by confidence rather than desperation. Marcus still worked 2 jobs, still struggled with bills occasionally, and still worried about providing everything Emma needed. But the fundamental anxiety that had consumed him for months was gone, replaced by the certain knowledge that he was exactly where he belonged. 1 month after the custody hearing, Marcus received an unexpected phone call from Judge Hawthorne's chambers. His first instinct was panic, wondering if Sandra's attorney had found grounds for an appeal, but the judge's clerk quickly put his fears to rest. "Judge Hawthorne would like to speak with you about a community service opportunity," the clerk explained. "She's developing a program for fathers going through custody battles, and she thinks your perspective might be valuable." The following week, Marcus found himself back in the courthouse, but this time as an invited guest rather than a desperate defendant. Judge Hawthorne met with him in her chambers, a space filled with law books, family photos, and the accumulated wisdom of 3 decades on the bench. "I've been thinking about your case," she began, "and I believe there are other fathers in similar situations who could benefit from hearing your story. Would you be interested in participating in a support group for men navigating the family court system?" Marcus was surprised by the request, but deeply honored. "I'd be happy to help, Your Honor. I remember how alone I felt going through that process. If sharing my experience could help someone else, I'm absolutely willing." Judge Hawthorne smiled, and Marcus could see the compassion that had guided her decision in his case. "I've learned that the best advocates for fathers' rights aren't attorneys or activists, but fathers themselves who've proven that love and dedication matter more than financial resources. Your willingness to help a stranger in a parking lot told me everything I needed to know about your character, but your commitment to helping other fathers tells me even more." The support group became a monthly commitment that Marcus treasured. Sitting in a circle with other divorced fathers, sharing strategies for co-parenting, discussing the challenges of single parenthood, and offering encouragement to men facing their own custody battles gave Marcus a sense of purpose beyond his own family's needs. Some of the fathers were wealthy, some were struggling financially like he had been, but all of them shared the same desperate love for their children and the same fear of losing them to a legal system that didn't always recognize a father's irreplaceable role. Marcus found himself becoming the voice of hope in the group, the living proof that good fathers could win custody battles against seemingly impossible odds. One evening, as Marcus was leaving the support group meeting, he encountered Sandra in the courthouse parking lot. She was there for her own legal matter, and for a moment both of them froze, unsure how to navigate this unexpected encounter. "Marcus," she said finally, her voice carrying a mixture of sadness and acceptance, "I wanted to tell you that Emma seems happy when she comes to visit us. Really happy. I can see how much she loves you, and I understand now why the judge made the decision she did." Marcus felt a wave of compassion for the woman who'd once been his wife and the mother of his child. "Sandra, Emma loves you too. She always will. I hope we can find a way to co-parent that puts her happiness first." Sandra nodded, tears gathering in her eyes. "I was so focused on what I thought she needed that I forgot to think about what she wanted. She wants her daddy, and watching her with you, I can see that you're exactly the father she needs." That conversation marked the beginning of a more collaborative relationship between Marcus and Sandra. They developed a custody schedule that gave Emma stability while ensuring she maintained strong relationships with both parents. The legal battle that had once threatened to destroy their family had ultimately taught all of them valuable lessons about love, sacrifice, and what really mattered. As Emma's 9th birthday approached, Marcus found himself reflecting on the year that had changed everything. The custody hearing that had once seemed like the end of his world had actually been the beginning of a new chapter, one marked by confidence, purpose, and the unshakable knowledge that he was exactly the father Emma needed. The birthday party was a simple affair, held in their small apartment with homemade decorations and a cake Marcus had baked himself. Sandra and her husband attended, along with Emma's friends from school and Marcus's co-workers from the auto shop. Judge Hawthorne even stopped by briefly, bringing a thoughtful gift and staying long enough to see the joy on Emma's face as she blew out her 9 candles. "Make a wish, birthday girl," Marcus encouraged, and Emma closed her eyes tightly, her face scrunched in concentration. When she opened them, she looked directly at her father with a smile that lit up the room. "I wished that every daddy could love their kids as much as you love me," she announced. And the room fell silent with the profound simplicity of a child's wisdom. Marcus felt tears threatening as he realized that his daughter had internalized the most important lesson he could teach her. That love isn't measured by what you can buy, but by what you're willing to sacrifice. Later that evening, as the last guests departed and Marcus cleaned up the party debris, Emma appeared beside him with a serious expression. "Daddy, I heard some of the grown-ups talking about the judge and the car and the courthouse. Did something important happen that I don't know about?" Marcus sat down at Emma's eye level, considering how to explain the complexity of their custody battle in terms a 9-year-old could understand. "Remember how Mommy and I had to go to court to decide where you would live?" Emma nodded solemnly. "Well, I was very scared that the judge might decide you should live with Mommy all the time. But I wanted to live with you," Emma said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "Did you tell the judge that?" Marcus smiled at his daughter's innocent faith in the power of simple honesty. "I told her how much I love you and how important you are to me. But the most important thing happened when I helped the judge fix her car in the parking lot before I even knew she was the judge." Emma's eyes widened with understanding. "You helped her because that's what good people do, right?"
Like when you taught me to help my friends when they're sad or when their backpacks are too heavy. Exactly like that, sweetheart. And the judge saw that helping people is just who I am, not something I do to get something in return. That's how she knew I would always take good care of you. Emma hugged him tightly, and Marcus marveled at how a child's love could make even the most complex adult situations feel simple and clear. "I'm glad you helped her, Daddy, and I'm glad she let me stay with you." "Me too, baby girl, me too." As Marcus tucked Emma into bed that night, surrounded by the drawings and photos and small treasures that made their apartment a home, he felt a profound sense of gratitude for the journey that had brought them to this moment. The custody battle that had nearly destroyed him had ultimately revealed his greatest strength, the unwavering love of a father who would do anything for his child. Judge Hawthorne's decision hadn't just saved his family. It had taught him that character matters more than credentials, that kindness is never wasted, and that sometimes the smallest gestures create the biggest miracles. A broken-down car in a courthouse parking lot had changed the trajectory of 2 lives, proving that we never know when an ordinary moment might become the most extraordinary thing that ever happens to us. Outside Emma's bedroom window, the city continued its restless rhythm, full of strangers who might need help, children who needed love, and parents fighting their own battles for the right to raise their kids. Marcus understood now that his story wasn't unique in its pain, but it was special in its resolution. Not everyone gets a second chance to prove their worth, and not everyone finds a judge wise enough to see past appearances to the heart beneath. As he turned off Emma's light and whispered goodnight, Marcus made a silent promise to continue living up to Judge Hawthorne's faith in him.
Every day would be an opportunity to prove that her decision was right, that good fathers come in all packages, and that love really is the most important qualification for parenthood. The road ahead would still have challenges, financial struggles, and the ordinary difficulties of raising a child as a single parent. But Marcus faced that future with confidence, knowing that he'd already passed the most important test of his life, proving that when character matters more than money, a good man can overcome any obstacle to protect the people he loves most. Sometimes the most important battles are won not with legal arguments or financial resources, but with simple human decency and the courage to help a stranger when no one is watching. Sometimes being exactly who you are, in your work boots and your honest heart, is more powerful than any advantage money can buy. And sometimes fixing a stranger's broken-down car fixes something broken in your own life, creating a chain of kindness that changes everything. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell, because our next story has an even more powerful twist that will leave you speechless. Click the link below to watch and prepare to have your heart completely transformed.